Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Science Shorts with Mr. Perkins. I'm Mr. Perkins. I'm a former biology teacher, current state senate candidate, and also current just trying to make some content for parents, teachers, students, and kids who are at home during the stay-at-home order, and hopefully we can at least provide a little bit of education with our screen time. But today's science is legitimately cool and interesting. We are talking, of course, about osmosis, which doesn't normally sound cool and interesting, but if you remember Friday, we set an egg, just a standard raw egg, in vinegar. Now, this experiment takes a while, so if you set it up Friday, great, it should be about ready by now. If you didn't and you want to set it up now, great, it's still really cool to see, but it does take several days. And eventually, from our raw egg, you're going to get something that looks like this. Now, a couple things to notice here. One, it's a little bit bigger than our raw egg. It's certainly squishier. And then you can see this translucent part here, as opposed to kind of this chalky white stuff that actually, if I'm careful, I can scrub this away with my thumb and it'll start coming away. And then so this is the vinegar that it's been sitting in. If you look down in there, you can see these floating chunks. So what happened? Well, the vinegar combines, so the egg shell is made out of calcium, specifically calcium carbonate, and the vinegar combines with the calcium carbonate to make calcium acetate, which is what's sitting in the bottom here, which is totally harmless. I mean, don't eat it, but it's not going to hurt you to touch it or anything. And then it also makes carbon dioxide as a byproduct. If you did this, you may have noticed bubbles forming all over the egg as it sat in the vinegar bath. And those bubbles were carbon dioxide. The gas that we breathe out was coming off of the reaction between the calcium carbonate in the eggshell and the vinegar. So, how does osmosis play into all this? Well, the eggshell is a pretty amazing thing, and it prevents things inside the egg from escaping, and it prevents things outside the egg from getting in. Now that the eggshell is gone, which we can see, this becomes, I'm not really going to be able to do it for the camera, but it's translucent now. Without the egg, without the shell, this egg is translucent. This eggshell is gone, and what's left is a semi-permeable membrane that won't let stuff in, or at least it'll do its best, but it's not as good as the eggshell. And that means we can do some more science with it, which is where we get to osmosis. So I'm going to quick jump over here. You may have heard these terms before, diffusion and osmosis. They are different things. So if we stick a bunch of salt in water, and then that salt spreads out, that's diffusion because the salt is moving. Osmosis is when the water moves. So if we have not salty water over here, that's the wrong spot for a moment. So if we have not salty water over here, and we have salty water over here, and we have a semi-permeable membrane in between them, the water wants to have the same concentration on both sides. Nature wants to balance. So water will move through the semi-permeable membrane over to this side so that the concentrations are equal. It will move along the concentration gradient, going from high concentration to low concentration, and equal these out. That's the goal. That way this and this are both the same. As opposed to here, this is low concentration, this is high concentration. It can't pull the salt through, so the water will move. And that is what we can do with this egg. So, switching back to this camera. So I did this with two eggs. One is sitting here. And this egg I've sat in a solution of just plain old maple syrup. And you can see this is now deflated. It's even more squishy and is smaller than the raw egg and is especially smaller than the egg that we have been sitting in the vinegar bath and haven't done anything to. So what's happened here is our maple syrup has a very, very high concentration of sugars and other solutes in this. The water in the egg, to try to balance out everything as it sits in this bath, the water is leaving through the egg membrane and getting into this. It's tough to tell, but so this started as plain maple syrup. You can see it's really watery now. The water in this egg has left the egg and gone into the maple syrup. So that's why this is runny and this looks deflated. That's why this looks even smaller than these, is because this has less water than these because of osmosis. So the water is leaving the egg to try to make the concentration of solutes inside the egg and the concentration of solutes outside the egg to be the same. So that movement of water through a semi-permeable membrane is osmosis. And we can force the egg to do it by removing the shell first, which is an extra neat little bit of science. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to show you these again on throughout the week, because this does take a little bit of time to work. But this other egg that I have sitting here, that I haven't done anything to yet, this has just been sitting in its vinegar bath, and I wanted to show you how you can still scrub the, where are we here? You can still scrub the shell off a little bit if you're gentle with it. They're not super breakable, but they are still eggs, but you can see just with my fingernail, I'm scratching the rest of the shell off. So I'll scratch the rest of the shell off, and then, rather than putting it in maple syrup, something with a very high concentration of solutes outside the egg, I'm going to take, over here, we got some distilled water. So I'm going to take this egg and put it in distilled water. And I want you to think before, and I'll show it to you again on Wednesday, and I want you to think, be good scientists and predict if setting the egg in maple syrup caused the egg to deflate as the water left the egg. Distilled water is something, for those who might not know, distilled water is only water. It's just H2O. There's no dissolved solids in here at all. There's no salt, there's no sugar, there's no nothing. It is just H2O. And so that means the concentration is going to be high inside the egg and low outside the egg. So think of where the water is going to go and try to predict if the egg shrunk when we put it in maple syrup. What is this egg going to do when we put it in distilled water? So that's I hope you're looking at these. I hope you got some cool results with your eggs and water at home. If you want to reproduce this extra step as well, by if you've got syrup, it also works if you just salt the outside of the egg or if you put it in honey or anything like that. But just general maple syrup is usually cheaper, so that's why I use it. But so don't get me wrong, this is cool, being able to squeeze this egg and hold up a flashlight to it so you can see through it. It's really neat. And if you want to do these extra steps, you certainly can. I encourage you to. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. But on Wednesday, we'll be back, and I will take this egg and have set it in this distilled water. So try to predict what you think is going to happen. Feel free, if you've got distilled water at home, you can't just use tap water. If you use tap water, it's not going to work. It has to be distilled water. Feel free to reproduce this part as well, or if you've got maple syrup and want to use this. But predict, be good scientists, think about what might happen, what we know has happened already, and use that data to predict forward. And we will talk more about this and more about how osmosis is working with this egg when we get back together on Wednesday. I hope everyone's having a good start to the week, and I will see you again soon.